Today we will look into a scenario in which the 5 strongest nations in Africa go to war with all of Africa, which according to my research is South Africa is 2, Egypt 1, South Africa 2, Nigeria 3, I think, Algeria 4, and Morocco 5th. Ethiopia was 6th. Yeah. Angola was 7th. But I didn't really look through it that well. So yeah. And this is the war. And the first thing that happened is with Algeria and Morocco, where somehow teamed up and they pushed into Western Sahara. And yet they went 34. Impossible. So let's move it to the 8 speed. Well, Western Sahara pretty much falls quickly because, well, it's kind of like occupied mostly. And yeah. But this is a slow advance. I thought this was a small map at first, but apparently it's a big one. Well, I did trace another map for this one a long time ago. I did say this was for another series. Guess it's not too late to make an alternate Future of Africa series. And they push into here. Where's Egypt go? Into some disputed territories. And they push their forces down the coast. Their other forces, they basically send down the Nile. Because a lot of the northern Sudan is inhospitable. And then in Libya, they make an advance. And why are they doing so well? But on Algeria, Egypt, into where there's a huge amount of underground hidden water, is invaded. And that happens. And then they invade Algeria. Libya is one of the strongest 10, along with them. And these nations make an advance. Why is Algeria doing poorly? Because this here. And then they take over this area, which is having a lot of problems. And well, Algeria sends troops into northern Mali. Yeah. And they kind of advance, which eventually leads to a stalemate. It's like, this is a cool video, I think. But South Africa quickly makes advances. Quickly fully mobilizes itself. And they quickly take over Lesotho. And they start pushing into Mozambique, Botswana, and Zambia. But they have one problem. They got pushed back on another front. It's only Egypt who's fully successing. South Africa is a very ethnically diverse country. A lot of these nations are. And I'll be back. Korean forces making a strategic retreat in this area. Why am I calling it a strategic retreat? Because a strategic retreat is when you retreat for another goal. That's more important, usually. And they push back Tunisia, which I think is one of the top 10, too. So is Libya. But no country has fallen yet, but you know who's first to fall? After a naval landing in Sao Tome and Principe, one of the most forgotten nations, falls. Benin capitulates, basically, because Nigeria takes it over and steamrolls into Ghana. Burkina Faso. And in Cameroon, they start heading down the coast. They even start an advance into Niger. And they continue their advance down the Nile. But their fronts are not very wide, and Ethiopia and forces take advantage of overextended forces here. And they make an encirclement and take over these forces, forcing them to give up. Well, Western Sahara is the first country to fall technically, but technically it's also not a country. Well, if I was going by what's technically not a country, Technically, I could have put Somaliland down. Yeah, technically. And the advances here in the Cameroon continue. Eventually, they take the coast from Equatorial Guinea and do this. With South Africa starting their campaign, even cutting off and circling these forces. Well, the problem with this is that big population, 200 million, over 100 million. These are, I think, both in the 30s. And then he's in the 30s. So, Dr. Congo and Ethiopia are very populous. But it's hard to say who has the most right now. But it looks like Libya, who has a very small amount of people, is going to fall. With a push encircling the actual capital, Tripoli. Tripoli falls. And Libya makes a strategic retreat, but doesn't work so well. Because Algerian forces take advantage of it, and Egyptian forces do too. They even push Sudan back. With Libya in trouble, forces are sent to Libya from Niger, which is a bad idea, but sure. Niger, Cameroon, and Mali all start sending forces, which was a very dumb. This is not a strategic retreat. Why? Because, well, it allows Nigeria to cut them in two, which is not great. No, being cut in two isn't that great. And the small amount of forces that were on that border, pushing in from Nigeria, the small amounts from Algeria push, cutting it in two. And why are they having so much success? I guess because, well, these countries are not the strongest. And they start pushing into northern Mali, into the Azawad wannabe independent area. And Morocco continues its advance, with Moroccan and Algerian forces continuing their advances into Mauritania, with them making an encirclement. And how are they working together? Beats me. They have a lot of skirmishes. A lot of areas in North Africa do have skirmishes. Well, the Libyan front is starting to be a slow advance. But the Nile advance starts going pretty well. Egypt is a very powerful nation. And they push into Eritrea. And they continue their advances, trying to beat the East African Federation with a strategical retreat from here. Why am I calling it strategical? Because guess what? It's actually used to the advantage, which an advantage is that. Basically, they move their forces into Botswana and push South Africa back to its border, almost liberating the exact full land. But South Africa continues its advance. Eventually, they're seen as a danger to this alliance, which is not great. And Egypt starts a full frontal advance in the Sudan, which is on its deathbed. But it's headed towards the sixth strongest nation. It's the first. So it doesn't have much ease. It has a bit of ease. It crosses into Ethiopia. Its goal is to cut off the Renaissance Dam. And well, they do this. And it's pretty successful. Sudan is in trouble. But do they really have the guts to win? I don't think they can win. But if they are able to have this much successful, that would be great. But considering some countries have problems. And well, this area is all. Mauritania is pretty much gone. Gambia collapses. And there's a new government installed. And yeah, Wild Mapper is pretty great. Make Wild Mapper great again. No, I'm kidding. But it's funny. And they continue their pincher attack, having major success. And they start pushing into weaker nations, even though I'm pretty sure with this much of your land left, you're pretty weak. And well, resistance in this area completely collapses. Defenses completely collapse, and this happens quickly. And while they do this, with defenses in this area collapsing as well, they basically take it over. And while this is major panic for Africa, with these forces being moved to the front lines, Nigeria manages to continue its goals, even entering Chad and entering Gabon. And why are they having so much success? Because there's something in the water. With Libya pretty much a desert, they start pushing towards the south. This is a major area for Libya getting water. How, you may ask? What lake is there? There's no water. It's underground, which is not a renewable source of water. And now let's go to South Africa to see what he's done. Well, it appears, let's see what we should do. He starts pushing into Zambia, and he in South Africa starts pushing into Namibia. And this is what his front looks like. But Namibia, trying to stall them and create like a stalemate, basically does something very strategic. They push south. And they do the same thing again. Although, how will you capitulate South Africa? They have 3 capitals. Botswana starts a push into ethnically Botswanan, which leads to a fast withdrawal from the north of troops. Like, they pull back all the way to there. But quickly they move their troops there. But this was a trap. They did this. South Africa fell for the trap. So basically, their second place standing in Africa is basically made, they're basically humiliated, which is not great. But Botswana continues hold of these lands because they're ethnically Botswanan. And yeah, you know who advances now? Libya gets pushed back. Without any water left, they basically just fall. The Sahara is having a lot of movement. Deserty areas seem to be having more than jungly. Khartoum is encircled and taken. With this, Sudan is pushed back. And their forces cross into South Sudan. But they notice they're advancing a bit far south. They plan a pincher attack with Nigeria. But they move with 3 pinchers. But the DRC manages to hold Egyptian forces back. DRC troops and car troops. Vroom! No, that's not true. That's not what they should be sounding like. And all press starts a re-advance into Botswana. And they push up to here. With Botswana's hold and Namibia's hold failing. And they push into Namibia. And it goes actually to success. What else has success? A landing in these islands, cutting off Madagascar. And then they start pushing up Mozambique's coast to stop as much supplies as they can. But they only get to here, but they even push into Malawi. And they use this to get into Zambia, which was pretty smart. And you know what they next do? They land here, here, and here, and the lemur troops start fighting them. And they start pushing in, with more forces landing here. With them quickly cutting Madagascar and taking Madagascar out, with eventually taking the capital. I don't know where the capital is. Yeah. And then you know what happens? They start pushing into Botswana. At their casus belli. But with South Africa having success, Ethiopia starts failing. Well, Somaliland falls. And then they avoid taking all of Somalia because it's not really in their best interest. But with them starting to push back Dr. Congos. And with air domination becoming here, they start making paratroopers land. Which are completely successful. And I mean completely successful. With these lands being quickly wiped out. And Chad is in trouble. And so is some other countries. Gabon and Cameroon have held on pretty well. But with most of Africa under the thumb of Egypt. Well, more forces are pushed back. And why are they having so much success? I wouldn't think they would be able to do that well. Well, they start pushing up the coast. They make Namibia control basically stop existing. Namibia falls into a state of anarchy, and then they continue. With Nigeria continuing. Now they widen this push. They use this to start sending supplies down, and then they start conquering the mouth of the Congo River. And this is what happens. And we start seeing major failures. And South Africa and Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. And I forgot to mention, Djibouti has fallen a long time ago. And this happens. And they do this. They call it a major success. With Congo forces in huge numbers, one of the most advanced soldiers being taken out. With the Democratic Republic of the Congo seeing skirmishes. Eventually they enter Uganda. And they push down the border, taking Burundi and Rwanda. With a goal to connect with South Africa, who starts that goal. And connects. And so these forces are surrounded. Well, armistices start happening. What do I mean by armistices? Well, fighting stops happening. With many nations of the world choosing, with many of the nations left choosing that instead of fail, which is Somalia, Uganda, Ethiopia, Mozambique, these guys, Angola, the Congo, Tanzania, and well, after seeing their failing, well, Tanzania joins, but some countries it's too late for them to be saved, and I'll be right back after. Annexed large chunks of the Sahara. Nigeria annexed large chunks. Egypt made an Egyptian empire. South Sudan made a South Sudan empire. Nigeria made an empire. Algeria made an empire. Morocco made an empire. The DRC lost its coast. That's sad. Ethiopia lost the Renaissance Dam. Sad. Libya and Cameroon are pretty much messed up forever, and I hope you enjoy. So I'm trying to get 75 subscribers. We're at 51. That's really, really close. But not too close. You need to subscribe to get closer and closer and closer and closer. So you should subscribe. Consider it. Consider subscribing to Wild Mapper. Like, who doesn't want to subscribe to Wild Mapper? Still can't figure it out. Like, it's mapping. Maps are awesome. Maps are cool. Maps are chill. Wild sounds cool. And will the East African Federation still form? Yeah. But there will be a special at 75. The special at 50 was so awesome. The special at 25 was awesome. Actually, it was 30, but that's beyond the point. And 20, Capybara's taking over the world. Capybara. Yeah, capybaras. Yeah. Gotcha. Capybara. Yeah, capybaras chill. Even gophers agree. And ground squirrels. But if you want to help me, please just subscribe, leave a comment, leave any emoji, and I'll respond with an emoji. Say your favorite color. I'll respond with a word. Yeah. And if you can think of an 18-letter word, please put it in the comments box. Like, this is amazing. I don't know any 18-letter words. If you do, you're a genius. But, exactly, I think there's a lot of mountains ignored, jungles ignored. Yeah, sorry about that. But, if you want to help me, can you please subscribe? Subscribe. And that's all for today's video. Please like and subscribe. The chillest Wild Mapper is out.